I think if you look at Sub-Saharan Africa and if you look at presumably 40, 45 countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, there is in general a huge dearth of opportunities, particularly in infrastructure. But if you look at who's funding those investments, effectively there's three broad categories, right? So you have the development financial institutions that have been the traditional partners. You have the Chinese who've recently taken a larger share of that pie, and you have private investors. But if you look at that private investor spectrum, actually you don't find many from the GCC. Now the question that I often ask myself is, why is that the case? Because logically it is geographically closer. If you look at the GCC, there's been huge investment in infrastructure across the GCCs, therefore the expertise is here, and therefore it's easier to go into Africa. And what I would expect is policy regulation improves, and clearly the GCC culturally gets more attuned with Sub-Saharan Africa. I expect that to grow. However, it hasn't been as much as people would have expected so far. I think it's time. If you look at Africa, and if you particularly look at the GCC Africa connection, you'll find that, I know we're talking about Sub-Saharan Africa, but if I give you a flavor of what happened, if you look at North Africa, there is a lot of comfort between the GCC and North Africa. So Egypt, for example, if you see what's happening in the last year and a half, really, there is a significant investment from the GCC into Egypt. One, because the demographics and the macroeconomic profile supports that, but it's also a cultural aspect. The fact of the matter is, apart from countries like Oman, where they have a cultural connection, particularly with the East African coast, you find that there is no real strong historical affinity with the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa. And I think that drives initially a lot of decisions to go and invest. So I think I'm seeing now a lot more GCC investors, countries, people like the Qataris, the UAE, investing significant amount of time understanding those countries. And I think that will then eventually drive that. I think GCC investors will need to get comfortable with the whole macro story, the whole cultural aspect, which people tend to ignore. I mean, it's not all about money. I think culture plays a big role in this. So I think the next couple of years I expect to see a lot more cultural activity, and between the two, that will then drive investment. That's my thesis anyway. I have been associated with GFC since it started, and I've known Alex for a long time, and I think it's been tremendous in the way that it's all put together, particularly the meta projects, because not only does it focus on the geographies, so you can effectively talk to industry players, lawyers, financiers, but who cover, like today, you can cover Turkey, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the GCC in one forum, and it's all pitched at the right level. So if you walk around the hall, you will find that the people are of relative seniority, and therefore you can have active and involved discussions. I think the relationships that I've developed over the years at Meta have been fantastic, and we will convert that into a lot of positive business.